And we are going. What is going on with everybody? Is your boy Eric, aka Young God, coming to you live in the Green Dungeon, giving it to you real raw rugged. And I have somebody on the other line. I will let him introduce himself. Who do we have here today?
I'm Dan Perlman.
How are you doing today, man?
I'm good, man. How are you?
Doing pretty good. I'm pretty excited for this interview. This is one that I've been waiting for a little minute because you've done the impossible. I'll tell you what you've done in a little minute. But
tell, tell
I,
me.
I
I
will.
don't know what I've done. So please tell me.
You've
Yeah.
done the impossible. I will let you know about that in a little minute. But before we get into that, I just want to let you know, Flatbush Misdemeanors, amazing show,
Oh,
and
thanks, sir.
that leads into the impossible because not gonna lie, man, pretty anti New York, big anti New York guy. It's I've
What bad experience did you have in New York?
I mean,
Who rejected you there? What shit went down that
where do I
turned you
begin?
off it?
Where do I begin? That's
Yeah,
a that's a whole thing. I mean,
yeah,
I think my thing started from New York is when it's like I have a love hate relationship from New York because
sure.
I love hip hop, I love rap. Started in New York, and I love old '90s New York hip hop. So
Hmm.
always will have love for New York. But gosh, I do not like New York on the other hand, and I think it's because let's say this. I think the personalities is such a different thing from what I would see in Florida, and it's
Right.
so brash and it's just so not what I'm used to. And I actually went to New York for the first time in 2020, if I'm not mistaken,
Hmm.
and I went to Manhattan. And if I'm not mistaken, that's where you're from, right?
Yeah, yeah.
That place looks like Jim Crow. Like that place looks. That is the most depressing looking place I've ever seen in my life. I stepped out of the car and it was like black and white. I was like, "What the fuck is happening right now?" It looked like
That's
the
so.
buildings looked old. Like it just looked like it was no trees. Like it legitimately looked like depression. Like it was just sad.
There's something where it's like if you're from there, the depression is just kind of like that depressing feeling becomes like home base. You just get acclimated to it. So you're just like, this is normal. And anything else feels weird. So it's like, I definitely get that if you're not from there, there's something about being comfortable in the sadness and misery of it
Mm.
that can only come from like, this is where I've been. So I'm not, anything else just feels odd. The chaos is calming when you're from here.
See, I need that makes sense, but I need like to go out and see like some trees, and I need to see some leaves, or I need to see uh,
Right.
uh, just much more than what I seen. And granted, I was there for a very short time. I was kind of in and out. I went somewhere and I left, got back on the
Sure.
plane.
Yeah.
But yeah, even before then, like I said, I think you guys are just hilarious people, and I feel like it's captured good in the show. And like I remember one time I was playing basketball with a guy, and he wanted us to know he was from New York so bad. Like he was not going to say it, but he wanted us to be like, "Hey man, where you from?" Like we were playing basketball and it was cold.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
It was a little cold. Somebody was like, "Hey man, it's cold outside." He says, "Hey man, where I'm from, it's 30 below, man. No shirt, still playing basketball." And I
Yeah,
was
I don't
like,
know. It's not like a Russia in like the 40s. When you read those old stories, it's like I don't know. Like I guess it's cold. It's not. It's not even Chicago. What are we talking about?
I mean, he made in the way like he kept going on about like how I think somebody like called a foul, and he was like, "Hey man, where I'm from, I seen somebody get clothesline
Yeah,
broad daylight," and it was
yeah.
like,
That's my favorite thing that like old NBA players will say in the
yeah.
like 80s and 90s when they're like, if Steph Curry played in my day, we would have just stabbed him. And it's like, what? What does that mean? Like, no way I would have let him score even 1-3 on me. I'm just punching him in the face. And I'm like, well, I would been kicked out. There's no way that was what was going on.
I love the banter between like the current kind of NBA crop and the old NBA crop that's going on right now. I don't know if you've been seeing
Yeah.
it, but you have the like, oh, freaking Bill Russell played against plumbers and
Oh,
TV
all
technicians or
the
whatever.
Bob Cousy stuff. Yeah,
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 and then you had Jerry
yeah.
West come out recently, and he said, I think he went crazy. I think he told JJ Redick like, hey, if you played in my era, you just be a regular guy. So shut the
Yeah,
fuck up.
he told him to fuck off a little bit. Like he was just a little bit like he's like, who the fuck are you? He's like, I'm the logo, and that's the thing where it's like when you get shut down like that. There's my cat. If my
I
cat
see.
enters a frame. Yeah. But yeah. No, that was fun. I liked when Jerry West kind of went off like that. I love JJ Redick, but I did think that was fun.
No, that was great because like me and you, obviously not old enough to see Jerry West play ever in like on a live situation. But I went
Yeah.
back to look at like stats and stories about Jerry West. Jerry West seemed like a god in his time. Like from everything I read, amazing.
Well, it's like there were those guys. It seems like just from stats that like it's like a lot of the players are probably fine, and then the couple players that would be like great today, they just scored like 50 points a game. So you had like Pete Maravich, who would probably be like a good solid player.
Yeah,
Just like he's so much better than everybody else. He was averaging like 44 a game in college, something crazy like that.
such an interesting thing, and I don't know if you got a chance to see the Winning Time show on HBO, but that was very interesting because apparently none of that is real. And before
Yeah.
I want to get into that because you as somebody who's been dealing with TV, I want to know your thoughts on that because like personally, I thought that was very interesting to like have like liberties on like people's lives that are still alive. Like if they're dead, kind of free game because they can't say anything.
Yeah, that feels a little odd to me. Well, it's like yeah, I don't know because I heard that too, and I was seeing like Magic and all of them get very pissed off. I mean, I do think I think it's okay to sort of fictionalize some stuff, but then there's a certain point where it's like you're going so far from what the reality is that at this point I'm like I don't even know why you're using their real names. Like at a certain point, it's like if you're fictionalizing everything, you might as well not like profit off these guys' names if you're not even trying to tell the story. And it's different. It's like, when you make a biopic or whatever, when you see those, they always clean up the person's life or they make it seem like they had maybe only one affair when they had 1,000 or whatever. That's the shit they all do. But yeah, at a certain point, I'm like, well, I don't even know why we're like telling this story if it's just like a lot of made up facts about just like if it's just this Wikipedia page where truly anyone is editing it and
Yeah,
it's just nothing even close to what happened.
not a spoiler, but something that was interesting that I found about the show. There's a span where like they go like on an 8 game losing streak, and then I think they play in Boston, and then they like beat Boston or they
Right.
beat Detroit. Somebody they beat like an important team, and I remember looking at like a video where somebody broke it down and was like that never happened. They never lost 8 straight games, and then they never
Right.
beat Boston
Right.
that year. It was like
Right.
that's a very specific thing to make up. Like that's just the oddly specific thing. That's just weird. I don't know. It's weird to me.
Yeah, well, there's that weird one about. It's weirder to me when it's a thing where it's like, oh, this is like actual history, and
Yeah.
you're making it up. Where it's like there was that Oliver Stone one, JFK, where it was like real stuff that was like, oh, his killing was a conspiracy,
Yeah.
blah blah blah, and then a lot of shit that was just fully made up. And if you're watching it, you don't know which one is which. You're just like, all right. And then when you find out it's made up, you're just like, oh, a lot of it's made up. But then some of it's real, so you don't even know. And we're watching that movie because we don't want to watch a 15-hour documentary.
Very very interesting how like I guess you can create and take liberties like you kind of immersing yourself in the show and doing writing now. Is that something that you want to do and kind of do like shows of that ilk, or do you specifically want to stay in the comedy realm for right now?
I like this sort of comedy that's like the tone of Flatbush, where it's like it can feel kind of grounded and like lived in, but it doesn't have to necessarily be like joke, 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 joke.
Yeah.
Like it's just kind of about the characters and living with the characters. So it's like I'd be interested in like other kind of worlds to explore, but I do like that tone of like because I think I was talking to a friend about this where it's like um, the best comedies like have some serious shit in it, and the best dramas like are very funny. Whether it's like Sopranos, Succession,
Yeah.
whatever. There's like very funny shit in those shows. And so that balance is always fun to try to find.
Hey, keeping it going with the sports theme, I think it's safe to say that Flatbush Misdemeanors is it's Rookie of the Year, in my opinion. It's Rookie of the
Oh
Year.
hell yeah!
It's Rookie of the
Oh
Year, man.
hell yeah!
It's definitely
Hell yeah.
Rookie of the Year because the way that you guys caught me first episode in, like it's we've all seen shows where they're amazing, but it takes a couple episodes to build up. First
Right.
episode in, wasting the lean, and it just goes in from there. And I've been just I don't know, just tapped in since. And I know you guys been working on the show kind of on and off, doing the web series and things of that sort. Um,
Yeah.
Going in, did you? Because I know you also said you had not a lot of time to do this. Like it would just happen in such a short amount of time.
Yeah.
Did you know that it would, I guess, hit this hard? Did you have that much confidence, or did you have your doubts before the premiere?
I knew. I knew I felt good about it, and I'm very uh, hard on myself and like perfectionisty with stuff, and it's difficult. It's very difficult for me to like watch the finished product
Yeah.
because I've seen it so much. I've seen, from the writing to the like shooting it to editing to sound mixing to color. Like I've sat through every stage, so it's like when you look at the finished thing, you're just kind of like, oh, I could have done this thing a little better, or I could have moved that. Like it's just kind of a cut that you can't fix. But I knew I felt good about it. But I also didn't know. I didn't know if that meant people would like it. But I knew I felt like pretty good about the end result. But also, I guess one thing it's like there's so many shows. I know how hard it is to get for me to watch anything,
Yeah.
because there's a billion shows and you walk out of your house and everybody starts just screaming show recommendations at you in the thing of like, what, you haven't seen Severance? What the fuck are you doing? Like, why are you alive if you haven't seen like
Yeah.
shit like that. And so I know how much it takes me forever to just get me to watch a thing. I have to, multiple people I trust have to tell me repeatedly, otherwise I'm just like, I don't know, whatever. It's very hard to get me to start a thing. So I didn't know if it would clear that threshold and like have people like decide to actually sit down and click a thing and start
For
it,
sure.
so. But yeah, I think so many of the comics and the cast just made that they've helped it reach people, just in terms of like drawing people into the characters so much.
No, for sure. I think you guys did a great job of like the character development and building the characters and making people want to be interested in even the side characters like a Kareem who's not like a main focus but you're interested in what shenanigans he's going to be up to or whatever things of that sort.
Yeah.
So I think you guys did a great job at that. I think you muted yourself. I can't hear you. I think you might have muted yourself. I can't hear you.
Can you hear me?
Gotcha.
Okay. The cat muted me.
Cat is going crazy right now.
It's loud purring. She doesn't like anyone else getting attention.
I
Uh,
see.
but no, so what were we saying?
We talk. I was just saying that you guys did a good job at
Yeah, it
developing
was
the
a big
characters.
goal we had with the show of like not having it just be Dan and Kevin and everybody else is just kind of like one-dimensional plot device. It was like, all right, how can we like make a show where it's like about a community and a block and a neighborhood and have it be one of those things where it's like, it's like panoramic where you can go over to this person. You're like, oh, that's cool. I can
Right.
like live with them for a minute, instead of just like, all right, once they're gone from Dan and Kevin's orbit, you don't think about them ever. Like, let's try to flesh them out.
And it's kind of going back off something you said. I do have to ask this because when you said it, I was like, "Has he? Have you seen Severance?
No, I haven't seen Severance.
The
I don't
fuck are you
have.
alive for? Like you said, why are you alive for?"
Everyone's people telling me that, and they're like, "It's so good," and I was like, "I know." I hadn't seen Succession until last summer, and that's the thing. People have been telling me to watch that for years, and then I finally watched it, and a friend of mine writes on it, and has been writing on it, and so I finally texted him. I was like, "Yo, this show's great!" Like, is that I don't know? It's like, yeah, they have like 500 Emmys, but it's just like it took me that long to actually start a thing.
Hey, maybe I'm just out of the loop and I didn't know. I had no idea Ben Stiller was this great of a director. Ben Stiller's damn near fucking Scorsese level with this show. It's crazy stuff.
Yeah, I didn't know. I'm hearing that. Apparently, they offered him to direct Good Will Hunting,
Really?
and he like turned it down because he was like, "Who the fuck are these kids?" It's like Matt Damon and Ben Affleck. He's like, "Oh, they have to star in the movie? Like, fuck that." And then he's like, "Oh shit, my bad there."
Nah, yeah, he's killing it in this show. And with you guys, like I said, that those two shows are my favorite shows. Severance, Flatbush Misdemeanors. Like
Oh, nice.
hand in hand with like Rookie of the Year. It's like John Morant, Zion. It's like you can't go wrong. You can't go wrong with it with either choice. And I feel like with comedy shows, it's hard with comedy, and I've never written for a comedy show, but I know it's hard because there are shows that are their episodes are going to be funnier than others, and so some shows their episodes that really might not be that funny just because writing like jokes consistently and
Right.
trying to fit it within the realm of the show because it just can't be like a random joke about something that has nothing pertaining to the show. I would
Right.
imagine that could get hard. So, is that a challenge from going to season one to season two and trying to consistently keep this funny, or is it a? Are you guys riding uphill?
In some ways it gets easier because it's
Mm.
like, especially in comedies, like the shit that makes it funny is the characters,
Yeah.
and that's what you were talking about, like comedies or shows that start pretty slow, and it's usually because they don't know who the characters are yet, and they don't know the pairings that make it funny, or like what, if they just cast it, they don't know what stuff the actor hits really well, and but once you learn that shit, then it's like a team that's played together for a while. You just know what their strengths are, and like I could feed them there, and like Hassan is gonna make that joke great. He's gonna like carry that, and Kristen's gonna kill that, and Kareem is gonna like crush that. So it's like, in some ways, it gets easier because it's like you have more faith in the cast, and they know the voice of their characters so well. You just know they're gonna like bring the comedy and energy to it, and so it's less of a question mark. You know they're gonna deliver.
You guys have been delivering, like you said, Hassan. He's absolutely killing it.
Amazing, right?
I
He's
mean, the
fucking
fact you
crazy.
guys have him on there and he's nailing it like every episode.
He is. I had no. I told him, like, I knew he was an amazing actor. I didn't know how funny he was. Like, he's so fucking funny, and he. I mean, I've said this, but it's like he has this like insane ability where it's like kind of like a comic where his voice is so like honed and just like defined that he can say like, I'm gonna kill you, or like, drink this healthy soda in the exact same tone, and it's equally funny and you believe it,
Mm-hmm.
and he's so within himself, like every line, and so precise. He's awesome to watch. I'll be in scenes with him, and it's just fun to just feel how good he is, because you feed off
Yeah.
that. It makes you better.
And then even on the flip side, he can be really like good at intimidating. So if he's trying to, uh, intimidate like the young dude that's trying to talk to his niece or whatever,
Right.
you believe him. Like, all right, and then
You
he go
believe,
right and being funny right after that. Like he's great.
and he has such an inherent like likability to him also, that you're always kind of like on his side. You know what I mean? Like, I'm watching, I'm like, I believe he could like beat my guy up, and it would also be like funny if he did.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, I'm always on his side because he's so fucking likable. Yeah.
It's so good, and like I said, I feel like comedy is a hard thing to do because I talk about this all the time with just movies. I feel like TV shows is a little different, but like, what's the last like great comedy movie? Like, it's not really like we had a renaissance where it was black comedies, you had the white comedies, you had all type of
Yeah.
comedies that were coming out. At this point, there's not really like that. You don't have those classics anymore. Why do you think that?
It's I think it's insanely hard to make a comedy movie. I feel like that's probably the hardest thing, because it's like, I don't know. It just feels like the ones that have succeeded lately, or like, and I say lately, like the last 10 years, are the more like ensemble-y kind of
Yeah.
stuff. When it's like, Hangover or whatever type franchises. But like, yeah, something I've thought about a lot is like, it's like you know, when I was a kid, it was like there used to be comedy movies where it was just built on like one guy being so funny. Like,
Mm.
whether it was like Eddie Murphy movies in the 80s, or a Jim Carrey movie in the 90s, it was just like one guy is just going to be funny for 2 hours, and everyone else is just kind of like a prop about how funny they are.
Yeah.
Rodney Dangerfield, whatever. Yeah. I was watching that movie Liar Liar a while ago, and it's that Jim Carrey one. Nobody else in the movie even attempts a joke. It's literally 2 hours of just like, everybody is a backboard to just like him lobbing it up and dunking himself. Like, and it's only a movie because he's so insanely funny. And there's not really, I can't think of like guys like that, any comedians like that now. I don't know. It's an insanely tough skill set. But yeah, I don't know. but those are still so fun to watch. You could rewatch a lot of those whenever, any of those old Eddie Murphy, Jim Carrey shit.
I have to touch on Jim Carrey. First of all, Eddie Murphy, he's a maniac, and Jim Carrey's a maniac. I want to touch on Jim Carrey, but
Oh,
the fact that Eddie Murphy, if you look at the Norbits or the freaking Coming to Americas, he's playing like 50 characters, or
crazy. Yeah.
it's like Nutty Professors, like he's everybody, and it's like
Yeah,
that's
the
crazy.
barbershop scene where it's like 5 Eddie Murphys and 3 Arsenio's, like it's like crazy. Yeah.
Insane.
It's like so crazy.
But Jim Carrey, I recently seen this movie last year, if I'm not mistaken, for the first time. Have you ever seen Man on the Moon?
Yeah.
So I watched Man on the Moon. Do you know like the backstory on how he was like in character like 24/7?
I saw that the Jim and Andy one, right?
Yes.
Yeah, I have very conflicting feelings about that because it's
How do you feel about that?
Well, I guess oftentimes what I think with method acting, from what I've heard about, it's like okay, where they fully immerse in the character and they are that guy and they become that. I'm kind of like, well, that's cool and that's impressive. And then there's a part of me that's like, I don't know, man. If you're like an actor and you're like a professional, can't you just like do the thing? Like, you don't need to act like you're Abe Lincoln at like a Costco. Like, just cut the shit. You know what I mean? You're like maniac. You fucking lunatic. Like, just stop being out of your mind. Like, it was just like, and if just, I do feel like it's one of those things where it's like, you often hear about people who like stayed in character when their character is like a piece of shit. You know what I mean? It's rarely like I became Gandhi and I was only Gandhi for, it's usually just like I was this psycho and I was throwing coffee at PAs and I was just being like a lunatic. And it's like, oh, cool. That's great. You were able to like immerse in that, So I go back because he's amazing in that movie, but I'm just like, if I were working on that movie or working on that set, I would be like, what the fuck is wrong with this guy? Can you cut the shit? Like, what are you doing? Like, you're being like a maniac.
So I have to preference this before I say this. I study sociology and psychology, so I'm very interested in why people do the things that they do. With that said, I love maniacs. I love absolutely psychopaths.
They're so interesting. They're so much more interesting. Yeah.
And there's a documentary on Netflix with the behind the scenes of that movie, and it's showing like never before seen footage. And there is a scene where like he spent 2 hours talking to Andy Kaufman's daughter in Andy Kaufman. Like he's doing the Andy Kaufman, and she's crying, talking to her dad like, Dad, I miss you. And he's like, yeah, I miss you too. And he's doing this whole thing. 2 hours. This is 2 hours long. I love it. I love it, bro. It is crazy.
I mean, I will watch anything about people like that because it's so interesting. But then I know how exhausted I would feel having to interact with them for a second. But from afar, it's the most interesting thing in the world.
Oh, for sure. I mean, because I know one of the big things was happening that Andy Kaufman had the wrestling thing with Jerry Lawler, and they recreated that in the movie. And I guess Jim Carrey was just going off the rails like in their match. And I think Jerry, he started like beating him up for real. Like he started like actually like hitting him in the face for real because he was like, "No, we're not doing this. We're gonna beat your ass." And
Andy Kaufman had some of the like, I've watched a lot of shit on YouTube. It's some of the shit like the wrestling shit where I'm like, this is the dumbest shit in the world. And then a couple of things where I'm like, this is the funniest, weirdest thing. He did some like weird, like variety kind of special where he's like interviewing. It was like as if he was doing a late night show and he's interviewing his ex-girlfriend and he has a really high desk and she has like an incredibly low desk, so he's just like looking down at her, like talking about their relationship, and then he put like bleachers. I'll like send you the image of it because I screenshot it. He put bleachers in the background of like the studio audience, but he like angles it so the audience has to like crane their head to like look at the thing. And it's one of those things where it's like they have to crane their head for the entire show, and it's only a joke for the audience at home. It's like I'm just like making it really annoying for these people. It's never addressed. It's never like talked about. And he had another one where he like comes on like one of those late night shows and he's like in a diaper and like a fake Mexican mustache and a turban. And he's doing some idiot dance, and it's stupid. But then he pulls out a guitar, and he starts playing the song Rosemary, this old, like, standard. And he sings it, and he's so fucking good. Like, he's just so good that for a second you forget that he's in a diaper and a turban and a fake Mexican mustache. It's just an interesting it's such a crazy good performance because it's almost like I'm gonna be so good that I dare you to like still not take me seriously. It's really interesting. I don't know if it's funny, but it is like interesting,
I
which
think
is
it's like
hard.
jarring almost because it's like what is happening right now. It's like I feel like that's why people find like a show like the Eric Andre show fascinating because it's such a jarring thing and it's like what is
Mm.
happening right now and it's like I don't know if this is funny, I don't know if this is weird, I don't know if this is disturbing at some level, but I'm interested and I feel like that's kind of what he was trying to go for. It's just like I'm just trying to do something that you've probably never seen before and it's gonna get you thinking.
And it works,
Yeah.
and that takes a good amount of like courage. I feel like to be okay failing,
Yeah.
like on a level where a lot of people are going to be like, "What the fuck is?" Especially because like I feel like that interesting stuff is often code for like a lot of people are going to hate this. A lot of people are going to be like, "What am I watching? This isn't what I paid for. I'm not getting the immediate, like French fry
Yeah.
gratification of it." Yeah,
Now, I want to touch on a couple of things before we get out of here. One being your stand-up career because I've watched a bunch of like the interviews talking about this. Didn't really bring up the stand-up. I'm very interested in what you have going on with your stand-up career. But before we get into that, I want to talk about interviews. Now,
yeah,
I watched a bunch of your interviews, and my favorite one was the one with Smoke Dizza in them, and I
oh
thought
yeah,
that was a really good one. And I forget Brett name who was co-hosting it with him, but he made a point that I thought, and the fact he said it, I bust out laughing when he said it. And I'm gonna try to say it in his voice. He said, he said, "Hey, I'm gonna be real honest, dude." He said, "Hey, I watched y'all interviews. Them shits was trash, b." And
yeah. I
that
remember that.
shit was so funny. And I want to comment on that. Being an interviewer, I want to comment on that. So something that I think is so outdated, and I want to get your take on this in the comedy realm. In the
Yeah,
journalistic realm, are like 5 minute press interviews. So if you're doing like a TV show or a movie, I know like they'll do like they'll do like 30 10-minute interviews in a
right.
span of like an hour or something, you know? And that is such
Yeah,
like a, in my opinion, such an outdated form because I don't know how much you can get out of a conversation in a 10 to 5 minute segment. Like you really can't get anywhere with that but the same old repeated questions.
yeah.
So I want to ask you, I don't know if you had any comments on that, but I want to ask you, are there things in comedy that you feel are outdated and should probably go by the wayside?
In comedy or in the interview sort
Comedy.
of
You could
format?
comment on the interview thing if you want to,
Oh
but
yeah,
yeah, comedy.
no, the interview thing. Just real quick, it's like I think it's weird because oftentimes when you're going into an interview, like you don't know, like you don't want to feel like I'm just giving the same kind of answers or whatever. But sometimes, if somebody's doing an interview where they're like, and we've all seen a million of them where they're like, and so what's your favorite part about the show? And I'll like answer, and they're like, okay, okay. And so why Flatbush? They're just like they're not engaging with anything you're saying. So then it's like, all right, well, it'd be crazy to. And then if it's like, oh, if you give jokey answers, sometimes you don't know if it's just going to appear in text where the sarcasm's not going to like
Yeah.
come through, and then you're just going to seem like a lunatic. So it's just like it kind of leaves you in this weird default point. But like, as far as the outdated shit, I don't know. I mean, I guess I do feel like I'll sometimes watch or I'll see those like the sort of late night shows of the sort of like topical or the generic jokes, and that feels certainly like outdated. Just in terms of the like kind of generic, more like monologue-y Twitter jokes that
Yeah.
like people will sometimes be precious about, and it's like I don't know, you could go online and everybody, it's the first take you could have.
Can I
I don't
com-
know. I
Can I comment on that because I don't want to
Please,
forget.
please.
I do want to comment on that. So, speaking of Showtime, I know Desus and Mero was on there. Desus recently hosted Jimmy Kimmel, if I'm not
Yeah,
mistaken, a
yeah, yeah.
couple days ago. And watching that, I'm pretty sure it was his first time doing anything like that. And he was like a little nervous, you could tell. And
Sure,
he was
yeah.
like reading like stuff off the teleprompter and things. And that just made me realize like, wow, like that's not what made Desus and Mero like a thing. Like people like them because of their like their wittiness, their improv, their quickness or whatever, and having them to like read off a teleprompter these like pre-written jokes, it kind of takes because anybody can do that. Like you know what I'm saying?
Yes.
That doesn't make
Yeah.
them. So I agree that is a very like outdated type of thing.
And someone like Jesus is so funny and so talented and great, and it's like, yeah, I agree. I think that the format is like the antiquated part of it. But when you have somebody like these are some like a lot of these guys where it's like, yeah, they're just so like naturally like engaging and funny and interesting. It's like, yeah, you just want to see them. And then generally then sometimes that can come through in like the interview format where it's like, okay, that's more them
Yeah.
just being able to engage and have a conversation, which he's obviously awesome at.
No, for sure. And I guess just yeah, just keeping in the comedy realm, looking at your stand up, uh,
Mm.
you're really good at that too. You're really good at
Oh,
that too.
thanks,
You're
man.
really you're killing it all over. And I feel like this being like I guess you would say Flatbush Misdemeanor is kind of like your breakout thing, correct?
Sure, yeah, of
So this
course.
being your breakout thing, do you want to kind of like build off your comedy or your stand up career, or are you trying to focus more in the TV realm? You trying to do both? Like exactly where are you trying to go next with comedy?
It depends where like last night I wasn't happy with my set on stage, so getting off stage I'm like, well, I gotta just focus on writing and TV shit. And I get, it's just it's stand up. It's so fucking hard to get comfortable and to feel like it's just very like
Yeah,
up and down or oscillating, I guess, for me. But the goal has always been to like be a comedian who makes things, who could like make, I wanted to like make a show and write and direct stuff, and then be able to do stand up and try to do both at higher levels and just kind of get better at it. So I would love to just keep doing it and getting better and growing, and because sometimes I'm like, um, I mean, they're very different muscles and very different processes. So I didn't get to do much stand up for the last 2 years, just working on the show. So this summer has been fun to kind of get back into it a little bit. But I do love the making a show and just being involved in all those little like pieces of it and finding the jokes in every little detail. Like that's really fun for me, and I could like do that shit forever. So I would love to just keep doing that first and foremost.
I have one more question for you, and it kind of goes off what you just said. So it's kind of an advice question thing. So
Yeah.
somebody, me, I've as somebody who's like been told a lot, like, hey, you should do stand up. You should do stand up. A lot of people tell me that,
Hmm.
and I'm just like, maybe who knows, one day. So my question for you would be, I think the thing that I think about is like the writing aspect, because I'm much more of a I like to just kind of I like the improv aspect of
Hmm.
things. And actually writing, I feel like is very interesting. So you saying you like to take the joke and work on it and get the intricacies and stuff. What would your advice be for like just starting off writing jokes, putting it down actually on pen and paper?
I think, well, and writing, I think the writing thing takes on different forms for different people. So like, I'll sometimes I'll go back and write and tweak stuff, but like most stuff that I've done on stage that I feel like has ended up like working or that I've been like proud of, it's because like it's something that I talked out on stage initially.
Yeah.
Like I had a vague idea and I talked it out and it bombed at first, and then you just kind of slowly like figure it out and get better. So it's always like for me kind of like the writing isn't like just giving yourself permission to just talk it out, because that something is like funny there, but you don't quite know where it is yet. And so it's like I think people do that too much when they're like writing stuff, is they psych themselves out if it's not perfect right away. But it's not going to be perfect. You're better at doing interviews and videos now than when you first started. It's like anything. It's like it's going to be rough and not ideal at first, but the kernel of something is there. So for writing jokes, it's the same as like any kind of thing. It's just give yourself permission to kind of like be bad, and also definitely like to try to talk out what you think is funny, and not. I think it's the most common thing when you start. I think everybody does this. Is you're doing an impression of a comedian. You're doing an impression of like, oh, this is what a comedian would talk about, or this is what a comedian would joke about. And I think people do that in writing also. I think they do that like, this is an impression of a scene they've seen
Yeah.
before on like other shows and movies, and it feels artificial rather than something like from them. So, yeah, I guess that's what I would say. But it's a process. But also, I think like, for someone like you who does what you do, it's like you already like connect with people and are able to communicate and engage, and that's like a huge hurdle, that a lot of people don't like aren't able to do.
Hey, well, I appreciate your advice, man. That was I will definitely take that sound advice. I definitely appreciate the compliment
Oh
too.
yeah,
I
man.
try to connect with people, try to be engaged, try not to text you. Hey, what's your favorite scene in the show or whatever? Stupid
No,
question.
no,
Whatever.
you're
Son of a bitch.
totally impressive. Yeah.
So yeah. Anything else you have to say for the people out there? Before we get out of here, man.
No, no, I really, I do appreciate, like, you know, I appreciate you and everybody who's like found the show and watched it, because it's, it's a small show, and it's, for the most part, people don't know who the fuck we are, and it means a lot when people are finding it and sharing it just because um, they enjoy it or fuck with it. That means a lot, because it's not a big sort of marketing machine just telling people they have to like it. So it means a lot when people are finding it. So yeah, I just appreciate that.
For sure. Hey, man, for everybody watching right now, you guys go check out the show. Until next time, I say what I mean what I say. Haters are gonna hate, players are gonna play. You guys holler at your boy.